And is it back to square one on the southern border? Tonight, Donald Trump already responding to Vice President Harris.
She was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country, and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs.
Now, she claims she can better handle the border. When Trump speaks, we'll take you to Harrisburg live. Plus, Hamas's top terrorist dead. How might a possible President Harris handle the Middle East? We're asking a top Democratic lawmaker. Also tonight, might an October surprise actually happen in September?
Is strong economic activity and, a good labor market and inflation coming down.
Why your interest rates could soon be dropping and what it could mean for the home stretch in the race for the White House. It is 97 days until November 5th. Do you know who and what you're voting for? This is The Hill on NewsNation. Hello, good evening. I'm Blake Berman. A live look right now at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump is set to talk live this hour. His first time in Pennsylvania since the assassination attempt in that state on his life. When he speaks, we'll show it to you live. It is also the first time out on the trail since Vice President Harris took the border issue head on. A bit of a preview from Trump earlier today while speaking to the National Association of Black Journalists.
Coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world.
Not ready. Well, we know polls have told us for the last year the economy and the border are the top two issues. It's been that way for a year. Harris last night began to mount part of her defense.
He tanked the bipartisan deal because he thought it would help him win an election. Donald Trump does not care about border security. He only cares about himself.
All right, now here are the facts. Some of what happened and how we got to this moment. Now, in his first days in office, for example, President Biden overturned Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, along with ending a measuring policy at ports of entry. 2 months later, the president put the vice president in charge of addressing the root causes of immigration. From February 2021, the administration's first month in office, through September 2023, government figures show that there were 6,292,849 encounters on the southwest border. The Biden administration then decided to deal with the issue. Last winter, negotiations for a border package between the White House and a key Republican senator began. But once a deal was produced earlier this year, Senate Republicans killed that possibility as Trump stepped in and voiced his disapproval. Now, here's one way to think about this political football. The first three quarters, the Biden administration's policies led to a surge at the border. Now, in the home stretch of an election, the Democratic candidate is trying to go on offense. We begin tonight with the Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. He is a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Senator Johnson, thanks for being back here on the Hill. Appreciate the time, sir. You heard there from the vice president last night out on the trail. She said that Trump tanked the deal. She wasn't wrong, Senator, on that front. But I wonder what the response is going to be from you.
Blake, she is wrong.
How so?
I don't know of personally any Republican senator that got a call from Donald Trump telling us to tank that deal. It was an awful bill. It tanked itself in less than 24 hours. It would have codified.
Yeah, I take you on your word. Sorry, I take you on your word that you didn't get a phone call, but he did make his sentiments known publicly, right?
So what? It was an awful bill. It would have codified an awful lot of President Biden's open border policy. It would have weakened the authority of a president who is serious about clearing the border. It was an awful bill. It should not have been passed. So, again, you can't blame Donald Trump on that. It was an awful bill. Unfortunately, Mitch McConnell negotiated in secret, gave Democrats political cover. But, again, it was an awful bill, and it's undeniable that President Biden had the authority to he opened up the border. He has the authority to close it. We have been happy to strengthen that authority, but that's not what that bill did.
So how are you going to, Senator, and how are Republicans, how is Donald Trump going to counter what we've heard from the vice president in the last day, which is just that. The message was, and maybe you heard it at the top of the show, that he tanked the bill, and that's what he did. Whether you say he did or did not, that's going to be their message. How do you counter it?
The way I would do it, what I would do is I would use my chart that showed that once President Trump had his peak, within 12 months he dropped encounters down to a little over 500 a day on average. Then he instituted Title 42, so by the time the Biden administration took over, most people that were encountered were being returned. He let very few people in. It was Biden that reversed, using something like 90 executive orders, all the successful border security policies of the Trump administration, opened up the border. He wanted an open border. He caused the problem. The only reason he's responding now is because the mainstream media finally, after a couple of years, stopped covering up for him. But again, he let in millions of people that would never have been let in under President Trump's border security policies.
I know you got to the camera just in time, and just so you're aware, we did go through the numbers right off the top. Let me ask you, though, Senator, because the numbers have been coming down here in the recent months as the president has taken executive action. July 2024 is the lowest monthly numbers since 2021. Is it working?
Yeah, Blake. So, again, he had the executive authority to close the border. He never used it until it became a political liability. But again, he ended Title 42. So they're still letting in massive numbers of people. On average, it's been 7,000 people per day under the Biden administration. This has been a catastrophe. We're going to be dealing with the ramifications of the Democrat open border policy for years, if not decades to come. It's obvious. Just look at the chart.
Let me leave you with this, Senator, because you are on the Homeland Security Committee, as I mentioned. You're also on the Banking and Finance Committees. And I look at your state, Wisconsin. We're looking live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Our poll from The Hill and Emerson College shows the top issue is the economy. In Pennsylvania, 50%. In Wisconsin, 42%. And I heard Jay Powell today, the Fed chair, Senator, essentially sort of give a little bit of a nod to the idea that, you know what, interest rate cuts might happen in September. And I just wonder if that happens 60 days before the election, or less than that, about 50 days before the election, if Democrats are going to come out and say, you know what, we've gotten to the other side of this thing. And if that happens, and if they do, what do Republicans then say?
Well, they haven't got to the other side because of their massive deficit spending. $1 you held at the start of the Biden administration is only worth 83 cents. That damage has already been done. It's irreversible. They're going to continue their war on fossil fuels. They will continue with their open border policy. Again, the encounters may be down slightly, but they're still letting massive numbers of illegal immigrants into this country, and that's going to cost us billions as well.
Senator Ron Johnson, thanks for running to the camera for us. The senator from Wisconsin, appreciate the time. We'll catch you back here soon on The Hill.
Have a good evening.
You too. All right, joining me today here throughout the hour, Chris Stirewalt, NewsNation political editor, host of The Hill Sunday. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill. Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And Mick Mulvaney, former White House Chief of Staff in the Trump administration, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. Donald Trump live this hour. I believe, Chris, this is going to be the issue that he's going to talk about. The vice president out last night with sort of her defense on immigration. I sort of laid out, I don't think the senator heard the top part of it, but laid out how we got here. And I wonder what you think we're going to hear from Donald Trump as the rebuttal.
Well, I would imagine Trump is going to be coming in hot because the comments that he made today speaking to the Black Journalists Society in Chicago are ricocheting around the universe, where he talked about Kamala Harris being not black, or is she Indian? And that conversation will turbocharge Trump. I'm interested to see what Mick thinks, but he knows that it's a live one, right? Whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's probably bad, but he knows that it's a live one. So I would expect that when Trump comes in, he's going to be coming in hot, just like a fajita.
Packed arena there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Mick. What are we going to get out of him here? Because I think it was a little bit of a surprise last night to hear Kamala Harris go on offense. I'll get your thoughts in a second on the border, and Trump's not going to sit back and let that happen.
No, I'm still processing the hot like a fajita
reference.
Come on, man,
really sure.
You know, it sizzles.
Look, it will be fascinating to watch because we'll carry it live here as soon as he starts. I don't think they had time to work his comments about Kamala Harris from the National Association of Black Journalists today into the speech. Okay, so what I'll be watching for is what part is on the teleprompter and what part is just him riffing. Because Starwald's right. He's absolutely going to talk about what he did today. Why does Donald Trump do that? He does it because he knows it triggers the left, and he knows how to drive a narrative, and he's going to get attention on his speech tonight across all sorts of media because they're expecting him to talk about it. He's a master at it. Will he talk about immigration? Sure. He'll talk about all the stuff, immigration, inflation, all that kind of stuff, but that's not going to be what gets the coverage.
Might not be what gets the coverage, but I think it's fair to say, right, like these are still the two top issues, immigration and the economy, and that's why I wonder. No, you don't think so?
I don't want to monopolize it, but no, I don't think Kamala Harris should be talking about immigration. I don't think she can change the national debate about it.
So can she?
No, I think they should talk about abortion. If the race becomes about immigration, and you've shown the graphic several times of what's important in the swing states.
Yep.
If it's about the economy and about immigration, the Democrats are going to lose. If it's about abortion or personality, they could win.
So why did she do what she did last night? Because I think that caught a lot of folks off guard.
I think that she is in a place where she is trying to go on offense on a lot of things that she think might be a liability or might be the content of attack ads. You saw the same thing on fracking, for example.
Yeah, we talked about that here on the show. We're talking about the issues, Linda.
We're talking about the issues, but Mick hit the nail on the head where he said it's going to trigger trigger the left, right? Because the flip side of that is that all that Democrats care about right now is enthusiasm and energy. And anything that gets the fist pumping in the air and gets people feeling like, actually now we've got a really incredible race that I want to be involved in, that's good for Democrats.
I think it's interesting. You talk about the enthusiasm and the energy on the Democratic side. That's been dominating the news cycle over the past week or so, or over a week since Kamala Harris, kind of assumed her place at the top of that ticket. But what was interesting about what Donald Trump did today at NABJ, and by the way, major props to those 3 journalists who questioned him or interviewed him on stage. I thought they did a very good job. I think he was in a way trying to reclaim the news cycle. He was trying to get out in front. Look, we're no longer talking about as a top story necessarily the energy surrounding Kamala Harris we just did then, but it's no longer the way that was before.
Are you suspicious of that or no?
I think that gives Donald Trump an awful lot of strategic credit, perhaps undeservedly so. And we are talking about Donald Trump. That's true. Mm-hmm. We are talking about Donald Trump, but we're talking about Donald Trump talking about Kamala Harris.
Right.
And that's not the place to be. I agree with Mick wholeheartedly, which is if you're Donald Trump, every word that comes out of your mouth should be immigration, border, inflation, inflation, immigration, border, and just put it in a word salad and serve it up.
But probably not going to happen in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania later this hour. Live look, we got our eyes on the Keystone State. We're back in a few here on The Hill. Stay with us.
Play and Alexa.
July 28th is World Hepatitis Day, an opportunity to bring awareness to a disease that affects millions of people worldwide. I am Dr. Griffin Rogers, Director of the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases at NIH. Your liver has many important functions, including digesting your food and fighting infections. Viral hepatitis is an infection that causes liver inflammation and damage. Researchers have discovered several types, including A, B, and C, but millions of Americans living with viral hepatitis don't know that they have it. The good news is we have vaccines to prevent hepatitis A and B, and medicines can now cure most cases of hepatitis C. You can find out if you're at risk with a 5-minute test on the cdc.gov website. Search Hepatitis Risk Assessment. For more information, follow us on Twitter at NIDDKGov. This is Dr. Griffin Rogers with the NIH.
1 in 4 Americans today are living with a disability. I'm one of them. People with disabilities are extremely talented, resilient problem solvers that have so much to offer. And we've got a trusted ally on our side, an organization we can rely on, Easter Seals. Easter Seals is leading the way to full equity, inclusion, and access to healthcare, employment, and education for people with disabilities, families, and communities. That's my Easter Seals. Make it yours.
Learn more and get involved at easterseals.com.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. Tonight, the world is wondering what could happen next in the Middle East following the death of Hamas's top terrorist. Its political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed in a pre-dawn raid in Tehran. Iranian officials are blaming Israel and vowing revenge. The response to an assassination, they say, quote, will indeed be special operations, harder and intended to instill deep regret in the perpetrator, the Iranian mission to the UN says. Israel not commenting on whether it was behind the assassination. For its part, the White House did not comment, but says it does not see this automatically turning into a crisis.
We don't believe that an escalation is inevitable, and there's no signs that an escalation is imminent. But I also said that we watch it very, very closely.
Joining us now, the Democratic congressman from the state of Colorado, Jason Crow. He is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us once again here on the Hill, sir. Appreciate the time. This got me thinking this morning, Congressman. You, of course, want Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States. And I was wondering to myself, what would a Commander-in-Chief Harris look like? For example, Barack Obama said he had no second thoughts about the hundreds of drone strikes in his administration. Donald Trump took out Soleimani, the Iranian general, in Iraq with the drone strike. If she wins, she's going to be dealing with the Middle East. And I wonder what you think Commander-in-Chief Harris might look like.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that I'm certainly not mourning the death of a Hamas leader today. Yeah. You know, a day that passes with one less Hamas leader on the battlefield and in this world is generally a better day. So I think we should recognize that. But secondly, listen, there are very few people who have more experience to lead on day one than Vice President Harris right now. She's been vice president for almost 4 years now. She was a senator before that. She was an attorney general and prosecutor before that. She's met with over 150 foreign leaders. She's led congressional led delegation trips overseas. You know, I've been with her at the Munich Security Conference, which is one of the highest profile, most consequential security conferences in the world, where she actually led the U.S. delegation just this past February. So she's been doing this work, doing it well. The world will be very familiar with her leadership.
I hear you there and vouching for her. Here's what she said as a senator when Soleimani, the Iranian general, was killed. She said he was an enemy of the United States, but President Trump's actions put more American lives at risk and could lead to a new war in the Middle East with no plans for what happens next. That obviously did not happen, Congressman. So I wonder why you think she is so qualified to potentially be the next commander-in-chief and why you trust her judgment.
But let's correct the record there. I actually share her concerns. You know, we just can't run around and look at any one issue in isolation. Every time we take a terrorist leader off the battlefield, we have to make sure that we're protecting our own troops. Let's not forget that as a result of that, there were attacks on U.S. soldiers, right? There were dozens of injuries of U.S. soldiers, rocket and missile attacks on U.S. bases, and there were assaults on U.S. embassies. So there were consequences, and that's what the commander-in-chief has to do, right? You just can't. It's just not enough to say we're going to go after bad guys. There are consequences when you do that, so you have to look at it soberly. Doesn't mean you don't do it, but you have to look at it soberly and intentionally, and think about the secondary and tertiary consequences and the ramifications of that. And that's what she was trying to say. That is the action of an executive and a commander-in-chief.
For our audience here on News Nation and listening to us on Sirius XM who do not know, the congressman is a veteran. Let me ask you as well, Congressman, about the committee that you're serving on, which is to try to figure out what happened 2 weeks ago in Western Pennsylvania. We've seen massive rallies now for Kamala Harris. Live look in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump is about to be speaking there again to another massive crowd. I wonder if you think both of them are safe right now, what your biggest questions are right now as that committee is about to take shape.
Well, first and foremost, I condemn unequivocally political violence and that assassination against Donald Trump. Unacceptable. There were clearly security lapses and failures, and we're going to get to the bottom of it because the American people deserve answers, and they deserve to know that their candidates, whether they're Republican or Democrat or independent, that their candidates are safe. We resolve disputes with rigorous debate in America, not violence, and we have to make sure we're protecting our people. And that's what this committee is about, is getting those answers, and we're going to do so in a bipartisan way. I just spoke with Chairman Kelly, who's going to be the chairman of the committee. I'm going to be the ranking member, the lead Democrat. Okay. And we have committed to do a focused, strategic, and bipartisan effort here. So we're going to get that done for the American people.
And you think you'll, as the top Democrat on the committee, you think you'll have the results, give or take, when?
I'm sorry, say again?
You think you'll have your findings when?
Well, the legislation, we passed the legislation last week that actually requires that we report to Congress by December 13th. So we have to submit a written report with our findings and our recommendations and our calls for accountability by December 13th of this year. That's what the legislation says. And something very significant actually happened last week, but that rarely happens, Blake, and that is every single voting member of the House of Representatives voted for this. A resounding bipartisan call for answers and accountability. All 416-0 voted for this, and that's the way it should be.
All right, Congressman Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, thanks again for being back here on the show. We hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it. What about those questions that I started with at the top? Because we continue to keep our eye on Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, about what she might be like as a commander-in-chief. We got to know what her sort of general worldview is.
Part of the consideration that she has to undertake when she is thinking about who her running mate will be is, can she telegraph strength to the American public? Can she show that as a person who freely admitted that she had never been to Europe before she went as vice president, for a person who does not have a portfolio on international relations and foreign policy, she needs. George W. Bush picked Dick Cheney for a lot of reasons to be his running mate in 2000, but one of them was exactly what he got from Dick Cheney, which was somebody who was tough and hard on foreign policy questions. That's something she has to think about telegraphing, especially as a female candidate. She does not want Donald Trump and the Republicans to say that they're weak, they're soft, they're not tough enough.
Okay. I wonder if she's going to pick Pete Buttigieg.
No.
She used to be Linda used to be a former right hand to Pete Buttigieg. We're going to ask Linda about that on the other side of the break. Steyerwalt's breaking down some new numbers. Mick and Julia as well. Live look of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, as we await Donald Trump taking the stage. We're back in a few. Stay with us. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Live look, Harrisburg, PA, as we are awaiting former President Trump to speak here any moment now. It'll be Trump's first campaign rally in the state since the assassination attempt on his life earlier this month. You can see the event here indoors this time around. Now, earlier today, the former president was in Chicago for the National Association of Black Journalists Conference, and Trump was asked whether he thinks the Vice President Harris, is only on the ticket because she is a black woman. Watch.
I can say no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
All right, so what impact does race and gender potentially have on this presidential race? Steyerwalt here to break it all down. Chris?
Wow. As the vice president puts her campaign together, she is also grappling, as the former president is, with these questions. But the former president is not the only one capable of cringe on matters of race, gender, and politics. You may have seen this clip from something which I swear to you is actually called White Women for Harris, which was an online rally featuring sports stars, celebrities, and prominent Democrats.
As white women, we need to use our privilege to make positive changes. If you find yourself talking over or speaking for BIPOC individuals, or God forbid, correcting them, just take a beat. And instead, we can put our listening ears on.
Land of Goshen. That is a TikTok influencer, somebody who does gentle parenting. And I just will say woof to that. So do voters care about these issues? Does it matter? Do race and ethnicity and gender, do they matter to voters that much? Well, we have a good high-quality poll from the Associated Press and the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. Question to voters, is it good or bad for the country to elect a woman? 43% say good, 7% say bad, mean, and 48% say it doesn't matter. Break it down by party. What do you see? Republicans, 17% good, 15% bad, 68% doesn't matter. Democrats flip it. They say it's good for the country to elect a woman, 70 to 28 to doesn't matter. Where are independents? They're on the doesn't matter side of the question. They're on the doesn't matter side of the question. Okay, what about a person of color? What about a person of color? Is it good or bad for the country to elect a person of color? 38% say good, 2% say bad, very mean, and 58% say it doesn't matter. Break it down by party. Republicans, 16 to 78, Democrats 61 to 38, independents 64% say it doesn't matter. Here's the thing. Kamala Harris and Democrats don't need to talk about race and gender because the people who care about those things are already on board. They're already voting for them. They're doing that. You see, as you can see by the percentages of Democratic support on these matters, she is better off letting admirers in the media and most, especially Donald Trump and his surrogates, take these issues on. He can do more on those questions than any Democrat ever could. I would just say, in conclusion, compare Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
Barack Obama was super cool about this. He didn't lean in. He enjoyed the bask of history making. He enjoyed the bask of being the first African-American president, all of that stuff. But he didn't make it about that himself. Compare that to Hillary Clinton. Do you remember what Hillary Clinton's campaign slogan was?
I'm with her.
I'm with her. Come on. It's about her. It's too on the nose. Be cool about it. Okay. Let Donald Trump continue to screw it up. Don't lean in on this thing. Let the media do it. Let Trump do it.
Speaking of, letting the media do it, letting Donald Trump do it, there was actually a journalist at the rally in PA just tweeted a picture of this. There is on the projector board there is a screenshot of a Business Insider article saying Kamala Harris has been elected the first Indian American senator from California. Which is true, but seems to be leaning into the comment he made earlier today about her turning black, which she obviously has always been.
I got to play my woman of color card here.
Do it.
So Chris doesn't need to talk about it.
I can't play mine, so go ahead.
When you are a person of color, you are very conscious of your culture and your heritage and all of the impact that has on how people perceive you from the moment you walk in the door. So, while we've been talking about the National Association of Black Journalists, comments today, I didn't get to watch them live, but let me tell you, my phone was blowing up with people's reactions to what they were hearing. All this is just to say in a very long-winded fashion that I totally agree with Chris that we should just let him hang himself.
What about the comments that Donald Trump made today?
Look, they drove the news narrative, right? It's what Trump does. Trump sucks all the oxygen out of the room, but that's not what I was going to say. I was going to throw something out for my good friend Starwell to think about because he and I are the only people old enough to remember this. Okay. Back in the 1980s, Jesse Helms was running against the very first black student ever to go to Clemson University and the black mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina. And all the polling data had that gentleman, Harvey Gantt, ahead of Jesse Helms. And the polls read similar to what Starwell just showed you. And it was Lee Atwater, I think, who did the actual research and stopped asking the question, how do you feel about race? And started asking the question, how does your neighbor feel about race? And got an entirely different number. And I don't know if it's still the case in the country. That was a long time ago.
The very famous and very effective Hands ad from that race, which was about affirmative action, and it was black hands taking a job away from white hands. And it was racially charged, and it was all of that stuff. It was effective. The point of this survey work, though, is this. Americans, by and large, independents, do not care about the gender or ethnicity of the president. They want a president who is good at being president.
I think
that's what they want.
Donald Trump live, we believe, other side of the break. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We will take you there live when it happens. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
Special guest Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Cuomo O'Reilly is the best cable news exposition in America.
Toe to toe and TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
Appreciate you, Bill O'Reilly.
Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
PA at any moment now. This is the first time that he will be back in that state since the assassination attempt on his life. It's also the first time that he'll be on the trail since Kamala Harris last night sort of went after Donald Trump on immigration and the border and the immigration deal. What's Trump going to say there? Once he takes the stage, you'll hear from him live. But first, the economy looks completely different than a year ago. That is what the Fed Chair Jay Powell saying today after the Fed decided not to cut interest rates, at least not right now. The Fed continues, it says, or the country, it says, continues to make progress toward reaching 2% inflation. But there were also hints that a rate cut could be coming in September.
If we were to see, for example, inflation moving down quickly or more or less in line with expectations, growth remains, let's say, reasonably strong, and the labor market remains, consistent with its current condition, then I would think that a rate cut could be on the table at the September meeting.
English translation there is they might be cutting rates, Mick, in September. And I just wonder, it would happen September 18th. And I just wonder if they start cutting interest rates in September, 50 days before the election, if VP Harris is going to say, see, we got through COVID and we got through inflation. We're on the other side and your rates are going to start coming down lower and things are going to be more affordable.
Yes. To all of the above, but here's the risk that politicians run. And keep in mind, Jay Powell is not a politician, and if he were, he'd be a really bad one. Okay? What the Fed sees and what ordinary Americans see is usually very different. Okay? You go to any place in America right now and say, is things really that much different than they were a year ago? They say, no, gas is still too high and food is still too expensive. But the Fed looks at different numbers. Remember, the Fed excludes energy and food from many of their calculations. So the problem that I think that Kamala Harris would run into if they cut and she delivers the message that you just delivered, which she's going to do, is overpromising and under-delivering. Because people are going to say, wait a second, you think it's better, you think it's all moving in the right direction, but I still can't afford to go out to dinner. You are disconnected from me and I'm not voting for you.
Tell me if I'm wrong. If they cut rates in September, Donald Trump is going to say, the fix is in, and he's going to try to make Jay Powell one of the most famous people in the United States of America.
Sure.
Fauci him?
Fauci him? Is that what he's going to do?
Well, no, because Fauci.
That's Mick's ultimate nerve.
We're going to put Fauci in a different category. Right. No, you will, because he'll say that. But he also has said in the past that he'd be okay with Jay Powell keeping the job. Donald Trump wants lower rates if he becomes president. He wants a weaker dollar, which is tied to lower rates if he becomes president. So, people might just look at him and say, well, Powell just did what you would want him to do if you were the president. So, yeah, I get it. You're absolutely right. But again, it comes back down to what we've talked about on this show many, many times. It's probably too late.
Okay.
The economy is people already know how they feel about the economy, and I don't think it changes between now and Election Day.
All right, live look of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump set to speak here in the upcoming minutes at some point, we believe. This is how it works. The next presidential rally that'll be on time will be the first one, right? So you have to wonder right now if they're just dotting every I and crossing every T on the security front.
Trump may well be on time today, just so he can make a point that the National Association of Black Journalists was late.
This was supposed to start at 6. So.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah,
never mind.
What are we going to hear, Julia, from Donald Trump here?
Look, I mean, based on what happened earlier, the reception to it, the chatter, I would imagine he's going to dig in on those remarks. Mick saying earlier in the show that he could divert from the teleprompter, so may not be getting a teleprompter Trump. But look, I think we're going to also receive or get a response to Harris's rally last night, and I'm curious to see if he's made any more progress in defining her. This is what Republicans and Trump have been trying to do for the past over a week or so.
What does defining her look like from his perspective?
Is it the classic Trump nickname, Sleepy Joe, Little Marco, Lion Ted?
He's gone with Lion Kamala.
Lion Kamala,
I think
he's also tried Laughin, Laffin apostrophe.
It could be that, but also I'm curious to see, does he continue, on a more serious note, does he continue on this issue of policy? Does he drill in on the border, dig in on that, or does he hit her on other policies?
The San Francisco branding is good to stick with. That's an identifiable thing. To be a San Francisco liberal is a thing that Americans probably understand. And hitting her as too radical, too whatever, that's all good. The place not to go is her biography, her personal story, her past, anything about her. That's not the place to go. And right now, Republicans are struggling with this question because message discipline tells you border, inflation, liberal, progressive economy. Just keep hitting it, because Trump scores really well on the economy and he scores well on immigration. So you talk about those things. But what you don't talk about is the ethnicity of Kamala Harris and whether she qualifies
Which
as
is
black.
exactly why he's going to talk about it.
Exactly why.
So why?
Right.
Because if he gives the speech that Steyerwalt just correctly lays out, so this is what she should be talking about, then he will talk about those things, but he's also going to talk about her background, her genealogy, her race, however you want to couch it, because that is what's going to get covered. And not just on right-leaning networks, but every network will cover it if he says something outrageous about her genealogy. So if he gives the normal speech, no one's going to say.
So you don't worry as a Republican who wants to see a Republican back.
Oh, sure I do. Absolutely I do.
He didn't say that, right?
So then what's that like fine line, right? Because you can obviously cross it and have it backfire.
Listen, I think the defining of Kamala Harris is going to come outside of the rallies. I think it's going to come in ads. It's going to come in surrogates. It's going to come in other methods. This is not designed to be something that defines Kamala Harris. This is designed to get Donald Trump on the press, in the media.
But the gains that Republicans have made with younger black voters, particularly black men and other voters of color, are put at risk by this sort of on-the-nose kind of, we're sorting it. These are just not things that Donald Trump needs to have opinions about. And if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bump its you-know-what when it hopped. And if Donald Trump could be disciplined on message, he would have won a second term, and he would be wrapping up his second term in office right now if he had the ability to not say things. But he doesn't have the ability to not say things.
So Linda, last night, VP Harris was out on the trail, and she went after Donald Trump.
Big time.
On the border. And so this is going to be really the first time that we hear from him and how he responds. Is it smart for her to essentially try to rewrite the narrative of what happened in the first 3 years and basically lean on what's going on now? Or would you tell her to talk about other things?
I don't think she's actually trying to rewrite the narrative. I think that she is going to continue to double down on the administration's accomplishments, which clearly, as the number 2, she played a significant role in, regardless of what the attack ads will tell you. She was obviously pivotal as part of that. But the thing I think is really interesting about this moment and her is that she is able in this moment to talk about the future. Donald Trump's going to continue to talk about what's already happened, what's in the past, righting wrongs in his eyes, but she's going to be whipping people up about hope for what things.
She's also flipping on issues, fracking, Medicare for all. So she's going to have to deal with her past too.
And we talked about it a little bit earlier. I do think that she is hitting on a couple of areas that she considers to be vulnerabilities for herself, but the move is hit on it and keep rolling.
Let me ask you about your guy. You were senior advisor to Pete Buttigieg.
And I love him. Team Pete always.
She's got a VP pick coming.
She does.
Is he in it for real? Nick's shaking his head no. Chris is shaking his head no.
As much as it pains me, no, I do not think he's going to end up on the ballot. I would love to see that. I think she's making some calculations about what she thinks is the most viable path forward, and my money is probably on the governor of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
That's where you are too?
Yeah, and actually my colleague Al Weaver and I have some reporting out today about Hill.com. So we have some reporting out today about progressives sort of, sounding the alarm on what they say are issues with Josh Shapiro, pointing to his response to the Israel-Hamas war, the protests over that war in Pennsylvania, talking about school vouchers in Pennsylvania. And, I think what that shows is, I guess, maybe in a way it's showing that there's real concern that he could be, from that wing of the party, that he could be chosen. But a lot of Democrats, I will say, inside and outside of Pennsylvania, really like him.
Those are the sorts of complaints that minorities within groups, within parties make in the run-up to the selection. And then after the selection, they get in line. Right. It happens on both sides of the aisle.
All right, by the way, as we continue to look at Donald Trump, or at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, as he's set to speak there, could betting markets provide some insight on the state of the presidential race? There's this thing known as Polymarket. It is a crypto-based betting market that covers sports, pop culture, and politics. It's seen demand skyrocket this year with over $400 million bet on the outcome of the race so far. So what are markets saying? Currently, they give Donald Trump a 57% chance of winning. Harris sitting at 40%. Josh Shapiro, by the way, there must be a lot of money coming in on him because 77% are giving him a chance of being tapped as VP Harris's VP. You dunking on this or?
I mean, betting markets are interesting because it has a bunch of people reading the polls and offering their interpretation, but they're just reading the polls. The betting markets don't have magic knowledge. Right. They're listening to fatheads like me and reading the polls and seeing what the analysts say, and then people are making their hunch. But the wisdom of crowds, some da-da-da-da-da.
The wisdom of crowds is exactly where I was going to go. But bring up that graphic again of the vice president, just to show you that it's not exactly like sports betting. Okay, sports betting, it's stunning to me how right Las Vegas can be on betting stuff they actually know about.
Right.
People are betting on this who don't know about it. And that thing that they just showed on the percentage for vice president still had Andy Beshear at like 9%.
Right.
There's nobody in this town who really thinks Andy Beshear has a chance for any reason. This is folks betting on this who don't understand what they're betting on.
Clearly, they're listening to Lyndon.
Well, the one thing that nobody knows about except for Kamala Harris is that it does also, she's going to take into account who she likes.
Yeah.
Remember, I used to work for Tim Kaine. Remember, he was almost the vice president for Barack Obama because they liked each other so much. And here's what I know. Kamala Harris really likes Pete Buttigieg, so we shall see.
That's her parting word.
Sounds like a cabinet secretary.
We'll see if it gets to that. Live look, Harrisburg, PA. Donald Trump set to take the stage any moment. Live coverage here on NewsNation and on the Hill. When that happens, stay with us. Other side of the break. We're back. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Live look right now. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump set to take the stage any moment. The former president's first time back in PA since the assassination attempt there. Leland Vitter, host of On Balance. Hello, hello. I said this at the top of our show, and I'll say it here when we end it. We've been taking every speech of Kamala Harris live over the last week. We've been taking all the speeches of Donald Trump live, and here we are. Right now, it is Trump's turn. In Pennsylvania, obviously, his first time back there, but it's since the shooting, but it's also, I think, I wonder what he says on immigration and the border, because last night at this time we got in our inboxes sort of messaging from the Harris campaign as to
more than messaging a new ad,
right? How they're going to attack this, and then she jumped fully into that, and now this is the first time for Trump to respond.
Look, and for the first time now, you might say it's a fair fight because we have two candidates who can go out, who can draw big crowds, and get enthusiasm and make their case. Kamala Harris talks for an average of 15 to 20 minutes. Donald Trump, it can be choose your adventure. Choose your adventure. Yep. And he's had a long day. He had the National Association of Black Journalists earlier today. So these things tend to be interesting. What I'm looking for in Pennsylvania is, number one, you covered the 2016 rallies. Are we going to start to see the energy at Donald Trump rallies in the way we do at Kamala Harris at rallies? Number one. Number two, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, much smaller town than Atlanta, Georgia. Yep. I don't have the population in front of me.
It's 51,000.
There we go.
Yep.
She got huge accolades in the press because she filled 10 or 12,000 seats in Atlanta, Georgia. That's 10 or 12,000 seats right there in
obviously
Harrisburg,
a cultural
Pennsylvania.
storm.
And I don't know if you guys covered on the Hill. I'm assuming you did, where she questioned whether Kamala Harris was Indian or black or which one.
They're leaning into this.
They are
at the event tonight.
Well, we're going to explain why he said it, because I think there's a very simple explanation for that.
Okay. This area, by the way, Harrisburg, Joe Biden won it by 9 against Donald Trump last go around. 45% black, 26% Latino. So that's some of the demographic there as Donald Trump goes basically between Pittsburgh and Philly.
Yeah, the Hispanic vote now, I think you're going to see Team Trump really focus on, because the outreach to black voters certainly was blunted by Kamala Harris's ascension to number one. Now you have the Latino vote very much up for grabs.
By the way, I should note to our audience here on the Hill, we were talking all hour, Trump soon, Trump soon, Trump soon. He was supposed to start at 6 Eastern here on the East Coast. He's coming your hour, my man. That'll do it for us here on the Hill. Have a great show, brother.
Hey, buddy. Thanks. Here we go.